Today we're going to be talking about why weather could potentially take over the Regulation E metagame. Now, in order for us to break down the Regulation E metagame here, I've jumped over to Pokéos as they do have all the Pokemon currently revealed and I believe data mined for the Teal Mask, aka DLC 1, which will be dropping in a couple of weeks, and we do assume that the Regulation E metagame will be played with these Pokemon. Now look, this metagame does have a couple of interesting mods coming back that could affect weather. We have the Poliwrath one here with Swift Swim 2, which I don't think is necessarily going to be that good. Especially when we talk about its counterpart shortly. You know, we have things like Shiftry as well. It's a good chlorophyll user. It has access to Fake Out and Tailwind, which is pretty niche. Again, I'm not too sure how good that's going to be though. We do have things like Gliscor as well with Sandvale. You know, we have like Harvest Trevenant, but basically the main mods we're going to be focusing on here are these ones here in particular. This little T-shape here, and that is the two Ninetails forms paired up with Politoed. Now, let's just jump over to Showdown and we'll take a look what these mods do. Alright, so the first one here that we're going to touch on here, and I do think it is probably going to be the best, at least of the, you know, the potential weather users coming back, and that is Alolan Ninetales. Now, Alolan Ninetales is really good for a couple of reasons, mainly because it is the best returning Pokemon that is clearly better than its counterpart. So, what I mean by that is, right now we have a Bomber Snow, right, which is basically the main way of setting snow right now. And if you look at this mod stats, it's not all that. It's pretty slow, you know, its offensive stats are okay at 92, but it's not very bulky. You know, sure, it can get up the Aurora Veil, which is nice, but again, coming off like 60 base speed, you're not getting it up very fast. Like, sure, it can fire off like blizzards, it has energy balls and whatnot, you know, even things like Earth Power, it's decent, yeah, but this one, its stats just aren't that great, and its typing 2 is pretty average. But Alolan Ninetales on the other side, you know, again, offensively, it is not as good as a Bomber Snow, but its speed here is way better. Its special defense stat is really good. Its defensive stat isn't amazing, but obviously, you know, when with the buffs to snow, it's still pretty decent, and then its HP stat is pretty, you know, pretty average. But again, this one's a lot faster. It can easily get up the Aurora Veil, which, you know, again, a Bomber Snow is not that fast. Alolan Ninetales, on the other hand, is very fast. And I do think Alolan Ninetales has a couple cool niches. One, I do think it could be used on, you know, very hyper offensive teams, like say Tornadus Tailwind teams. And then you use this one kind of as just like a fast Aurora Veil setter. Basically, you know, you allow your squishy, but, you know, very offensive monster to come in, you know, maybe tank an extra hit or two because of this, you know, the Aurora Veil. And then you're basically just able to run through. Now, again, at 109 speed, this is really cool because while it doesn't necessarily outspeed the genies, it does outspeed a lot of Pokemon right now. Unfortunately, a lot of Fluttermanes are always going to around that, you know, modest 180 speed anyway. Even if they run Timid, they are always going to outspeed you. But there's a lot of Pokemon out there like Non-Scarf Shifu, you know, again, Non-Scarf Chi-Yu. There's a lot of like really, you know, good offensive threats out there that this one will outspeed, allow you to get the Aurora Veil up against, and then, you know, really just start to like eat hits on other mons, and then really just put on the pressure. And again, you know, we touched on it before. This one's like pretty incredibly bulky because of snow, right? Like, its HP stat's not the best, but even if you max it out, you get 180, then you double this like this physical defense stat, sorry, and all of a sudden this mod becomes an absolute beast. And then it also has two of the best stab moves in the game for like just spamming, right? Like, Moonblast is an insane stab move, especially if you do pair this up with something like Chi-Yu. Like, sure, this one doesn't necessarily have the best special attack stat, right? But if you run something like this and then pair it with a Chi-Yu, all of a sudden this mon is like going to be hitting really hard with things like Moonblast. And then again, it's Blizzard too. Like, you don't want to just sit there eating Blizzards, right? Like, that 10% chance to freeze, if you get to click that 2 or 3 times, you know, in a game, chances are, you know, one of them's going to freeze. And it's pretty good, man. It's freaking good. This one's also like really good with Light Clay, obviously, because you want the Aurora Veil. I could also see a world where like Rocky Helmet is also really good on this one too, because again, with the changes to the physical defense stat, like, this one eats Qian Power attacks, right? Like, Qian Power, he doesn't want to sucker punch you, he doesn't want to ice spinning you. Like, honestly, I think the best thing Qian Power can do to you is Sacred Sword, and I'm pretty sure from a Jolly Qian Power with like no bulk, you still only take like 40% max, which is kind of insane. But yeah, this one's really cool. I also didn't even touch on Freeze Dry as well, which I do think is like super sick into the metagame, right? Because even if, say, like an Urshifu goes Terra Water in front of you, you probably still just one-shotting it with Freeze Dry anyway. You know, it's a stab Freeze Dry, again, potentially next to something like Chi-Yu, which is something I'm really excited to try out. I do think this one could be really good. It does have a lot of really cool supporting moves as well. Like, it's a fast Icy Wind user, which could be pretty cool. Obviously, you know, Iron Bundle is probably a better fast Icy Wind user, but Alolan Ninetales paired up with Iron Bundle as well, I think is going to be awesome. Like, I think, especially for Iron Bundles, Alolan Ninetales is a way better partner than a Bomber Snow. It just allows you to do so much more. And again, like, if you offer the Alolan Ninetales that speed control, all of a sudden, you know, if you're at -1, the Alolan Ninetales is going to outspeed you, potentially with Blizzards, Moonblast. Like, it's going to be really sick. It also has access as well to things like Dazzling Gleam, which could be kind of cool. Like, again, if you're pairing this thing up with Chi-Yu, having the Dazzling Gleam on it could be really cool. It also has things like Encore as well, which I do believe will run back in like 2017. But, you know, catching like, say, slower mons like Iron Hands, for example, you know, if you swap it on a Fake Out, then it's like, hey, I'm just going to Encore you if you stay in. Also things like fake tears again. Like I know I keep going back to like, you know, Iron Bundle and Chi-Yu with this mon, but I do think like again, I think like this mon with like a set like, I don't know, maybe it's hard to say, right? Maybe like Dazzling Gleam, and then you like drop this for like Icy Wind, right? And then you pair this up with your Chi-Yu, and then all of a sudden like you just get a fast fake tears off, potentially like a fast Icy Wind. I do think this mon could do a lot of work next, like, you know, paired up with something like Chi-Yu. I do think it's gonna be really, really cool. And I do think too as well, it's going to benefit a lot from Terra. I was kind of like contemplating what you want to go right on this mon, because like obviously you want to get rid of your steel weakness, like that's the big thing this mon has. And I do think Terra Fire could probably be a pretty cool play for this. Potentially Terra Poison as well, but obviously we'll have to wait and see how, you know, it pans out. But yeah, I think Alolan Ninetales is definitely a cool mon. I think its impact it's going to have on the metagame is crazy, because it's going to be one of those like weather setters, kind of like T-Tar, where it's still good even without Pokemon that pair well with it, right? Like there's no real slush rush users you want to pair Alolan Ninetales with, but there are Pokemon obviously, you know, like Iron Bundle that are going to want to just sit next to this thing and just spam out blizzards. Or even, you know, you have Iron Bundle be the support Pokemon, and you have like, you know, a Alolan Ninetales be the offensive Pokemon, where you say, hey, I'm going to run like a Choice Specs Alolan Ninetales. It's just going to sit there and spam Blizzard, and then I'm going to have something like, you know, maybe a bulkier, slower Iron Bundle that's just going to sit there and, you know, set up the screens for you and then, you know, go from there. So I do think Alolan Ninetales will definitely be the best Pokemon returning, at least in terms of the Weather Wars. Alright, now we're going to take a look at the one I'm the most excited for. I've said it a couple times before, I'm such a big Politoed fan, and I do think Politoed as a Drizzle user is just better than Pelipper, right? So if we have a look at Pelipper, obviously, you know, its typing's not great. Its base stats are like pretty average. I think it's like a 440 base stat mon. It's pretty average. Like it's got a nice physical defense stat, a decent, you know, special attack stat. Its speed's bad, its HP's bad, its special defense is bad. Then you look at Big Chad Politoed here. Obviously, defensive stat's not as great, but again, this is a mon where you can just invest fully into its physical defense stat. It's got a way better HP stat, you know, way better special defense stat, which are both really important. It's a bit faster too, and a special attack stat, even with, you know, nothing invested in it, is still pretty damn good. But Politoed, I do think, enables kind of like a bit of a different mode, right, into rain, which, you know, is something that Pelipper didn't offer, right? So obviously Pelipper does offer things, you know, like Tailwind, you know, stab hurricanes in the rain and whatnot, which is all really cool. But Politoed is really good at enabling the Perish Trap mode, right? Now, I could see a world where you run some rain team, right, where it's like, you know, say Urshifu with Choice Scarf is like kind of your rain abuser on the team. You've got Gothitelle as like a fake out mon. Gothitelle. You could even potentially slap something on this, like say like a Basculegion as your like your ghost type, which I do think, again, like Basculegion in rain, by the way, is kind of fucking poggers, I'm not gonna lie. You could even slap, you know, if you're really scared of like, you know, grass moves, for example, you could go like a Saps for Azu. I think Fluttermane is just always gonna be like really, really good on like, you know, modes like this. And then you probably just want to slap like maybe like say like a Rillaboom or something on here. Again, this is something I'd have to test out a bit more. Obviously, but like having like a Perish Trap mode where say you lead with something like these two, try pick up a quick KO, you know, go like Helping Hand on this mon. You just go like Choice Scarf, Surging Strikes, like pick up a KO, and then like you just look to like, you know, swap Urshi out, set up the Perish, and then just use this. And that's where like, again, like obviously I think Incin would be really, really cool in it. But again, I think like something like a Rillaboom that would like allow you to like have that pivot option, right? Where, you know, maybe you set up the Trick Room on the Politoed, sorry, not the Trick Room, the Perishon, you know, Gothitelle fakes out as the Rillaboom swaps in, and then like Rillaboom can like U-turn as you swap out the Gothitelle and then bring the Gothitelle back in. I do think there's like a really, really cool game plan somewhere along this line. I do think like just adding that Perish mode to Rain is like so cool. Like I think it's just going to give the archetype just like that little bit of extra, like to push it over the line, right? Because even if you go up against Sun and like, you know, they swap in their Torkoal, all of a sudden if you just like trap their Torkoal in, you get the Perish up, you know, you're able to cycle your Politoed back in, and then like all of a sudden it's like, hey, you know, your weather setter now is now trapped. I've got the weather up that I want, and then your weather setter is going to go down to, you know, it's going to go down to the Perish, which is really, really cool. But this one, look, it does a lot, right? I think it could definitely be a really good Rocky Helmet user. Obviously, you know, it is going to be buffing up opposing Urshifus, but being able to swap in, you know, resist the hits at least. Again, like I think probably something like this will be like almost what like everyone runs on it, right? I think he's gonna go something like this, bold, and then just like probably just like split these, right? Probably something along these lines if I had to guess. Yeah, you're gonna come in, you're gonna eat, you know, the Surging Strikes. You got things like Helping Hand. I do think Scold will be coming back on this one as well. I don't know if it was like DLC 1 or DLC 2 that teased it, but I definitely think based on what happened in Scarlet and Violet, I do think that DLC 1 will have a lot of new moves and a lot of returning moves too, which is going to be pretty cool. Obviously, I think if Politoed gets Scald, it's going to be great. Like, it can kind of just sit there, spam out Scald, which is really cool. It also has access to things like Ice Beam as well, which is really good for Landorus. It has Icy Wind for speed control as well. Obviously, you know, you're going to run this thing as kind of a bulky mod. It's going to sit there. It's going to spam out moves like Icy Wind. It also, you know, we kind of touched on Helping Hand. Also Perish Song. Like, Perish Song's another, obviously, great mode on this spawn. It also has access to things like Encore as well, which could be really good for, you know, like catching slower mons or, you know, again, things in like a potential Perish Trap mode, right, where you get your Gothitelle in, and then you just like Encore them into a Protect or something as they're trapped in there. Haze is also really good as well if things like Dozo or Setup become really common. But I definitely think Politoed with like Helmet or, as I said, probably Damp Rock as well, is probably going to be the main way this mon's used. Obviously, it's still early. I would definitely consider bringing Politoed to the Queensland Regional, or Brisbane Regional, I should say. Which I do think is, you know, I think what's that? That's in November, which should be on Regulation E, which should have DLC 1 mons. But yeah, I do think it's going to have a really, really good place in the metagame. Because I do think Rain right now is pretty good. Actually, I didn't even touch on it, dude. I'm actually so mad at myself. Get rid of Vascular Legion. Dude, I'm like talking about this archetype for this team. It's Tornadus or Thunderous. Like, so... I'll actually leak here. I had a core that I was building just for fun with these guys here. I probably should have done this earlier, yeah. So it's like Politoed plus these two. Actually, the core I was building was actually Kyogre plus these two for fun. But like you have this as your Choice Scarf Mon with like Wild Bolt Storm. And then you run this thing like Life Orb as just like a Bleak Wind Storm user. And you just run these two like super high for offensive. This one can also like give you Heat Wave as well if like you really want like something for Outsider Rain. And then yeah, you just go something like this. I think that could be like really, really cool. These two paired up with Toad is really sick. And then again, like even like, you know, if you've got the scarf here on that, you just got like Band here, or like you swap this out for like Bascule Legion. That's probably like even better, right? You just got like Bascule Legion, potentially just run like Choice Band Bascule Legion, or again, like this could also be a Life Orb on with like Swift Swim. And then like Last Respects late game, right, is just like sick. Like use Politoed plus like 2 of these to like break a hole for like these guys to eventually come in and clean up, right? It's like, hey, you know, do they have the Perish mode in the back, or do they have like the Bascule Legion in the back? Like, dude, I think Rain Politoed is going to be so freaking sick, man. I'm so excited to test it out. All right, and then finally here we have the Forgotten Pokemon. Everyone's probably, you know, the mon no one's hyped about for, you know, when they're coming back, and that is Ninetails. Now, look, the reason a lot of people, I think, are pretty low on Ninetails is because everyone considers Torkoal, right, just to be the better weather setter, right? Which to me is like, I get it. Like, oh my god, it's got Torque. There we go, freak. Like, Torkoal, I do understand why people think this is the better weather setter, right? Obviously, this mon, under Trick Room, is insane, right? It has access to things like Eruption, God, I can't English, please. Eruption, it has access to things like Yawn as well. It has the Earth Power for coverage. Torkoal just does a lot. It's very physically defensive as well. And again, in the sun, Eruption is freaking sick, right? We all get it. Torkoal is a fantastic weather setter. Also, like, Overheated Jetpack as well is, like, pretty kind of pretty cool as well. I'm not going to lie. Really good for resetting your weather. But in lower Ninetales, what does this mon do that Torkoal doesn't? In my opinion, what it does best is it's just a base 100 speed mon that has Will-O-Wisp. Right there, dude. There are a lot of mons you're going to be able to catch with this, right? Things like the Urshis, if they're not scarfed, is going to be really good. It's going to be really good for catching the Iron Hands as well. Because, like, again, like with access to things like Covet Cloak, you could run Covet Cloak on this and just use it as a fast Will-O-Wisp user. Obviously, you know, I'm pretty sure, yeah, it gets Overheat too, which is kind of cool if you want to run something like the Eject Pack that we were kind of just touching on, which I do think is pretty nice. It also gets access to like a fast Heat Wave as well, which could be like really clutch in late game situations. Like this mon's special attack stat is like, you know, nothing crazy. But, like, neither is Torkoal's, and Torkoal's still, like, really powerful. I guess the main difference is, like, obviously Torkoal has Eruption and Ninetails doesn't. Torkoal under Trick Room 2 is, like, always just, like, the fastest thing on the board, where, like, Ninetails would really need Tailwind. And I don't necessarily think that, like, Tornadus is going to be, like, amazing as a Tailwind setter. At least on a Sun team. Obviously, Tornadus is, like, the best Tailwind setter we have. But I do think Ninetails with, like, Roaring Moon is going to be, like, a really cool combo. Because, like, Roaring Moon is a mon that, like, it doesn't want to have to like run a booster energy unless it's like a Terra Flying set. But like the only sets that have really been good so far have been the Terra Flying sets, right? So having something like you know, a Ninetails there next to the Roaring Moon to potentially give it that speed boost, and then like Roaring Moon could be the Tailwind setter, I do think could be really, really cool in the metagame. But this mon does have access to a couple other things. You know, we touched on some of the moves with Alola Ninetales. It has like, you know, a pretty fast Encore as well, which I do think is good. You know, especially if the metagames do continue to lean more towards balance. You know, having this like fast weather setter with, you know, support moves like Encore, I do think is really, really cool. It also has things like Charm as well, for like if you're worried about like a Chen Pao clicking Sucker Punch on you. Obviously, you know, you're able to just dodge that, charm it off, which I do think is pretty cool. Another one as well, which is kind of interesting, is Power Swap. Swaps the attack and special attack stats with the target. This could be really sick for like something like an Iron Hands, right? Like imagine you're like playing, you know, up against an Iron Hands, and then you just give it 70 to attack. Like it would just absolutely cripple it. Like sure, you don't want the Iron Hands as like special attack stat, but then you're just gonna swap out anyway, right? You're the weather setter, you're happy to get out of there. You just slow down their offensive mon. Other cool sets as well is I do think like Willow plus Hex on a Terra Ghost set could actually be like kind of nice on this mon. Because obviously like I do think like, you know, Terra Ghost is like really good on these weather setters, right? Because you don't want to get faked out, especially, you know, if you're going for something like Willow Wisp, right? You want to go up against an Iron Hand, you want to just go like Terra Ghost, make sure you get the Willow Wisp on it, and you know, then you can like spam out like these really powerful hexes, which I do think is pretty cool, especially, you know, if you are running something, say like, you know, just max. Some other cool stuff as well. It does have Energy Ball, which is like really good, obviously, to help out with really good at helping out with the water types. Like obviously this mon's like biggest weakness is, you know, like ground and water types, and having things like Energy Ball is really, really cool into that. And then finally it has Calm Mind, which I don't necessarily think is going to be like, you know, an amazing move on this mon, but you know, in potential situations where, you know, it's like a late game scenario, you just get up like one Calm Mind and then you start clicking Heat Waves in the sun, it could definitely put out a lot of damage. Now guys, that is all the weather setters returning in, you know, Regulation E, or at least we're assuming are returning in Regulation E. Again, we're basing everything, you know, we found based off what, you know, essentially what Pokos has been saying, or Pokios. I do believe Cerebi has got all of the same information as well, which means it is pretty reliable. Obviously, you know, if, you know, Big Cerebi's got it, then you would hope that it is pretty set in stone. But yeah, guys, that's basically it for this one. Let me know what you think of, you know, the weather setters down below. Let me know what you think too, as well as like some of the Pokemon like Poliwrath and, you know, Shiftry returning. Unfortunately, I don't think they're going to be like the best Chlorophyll users or Swiftsum users. Even Gliscor, as much as I love it, you know, I might even actually try out like Sandvale plus Bright Powder, because I do love Gliscor. But yeah, let me know what you think of them down below as well. If you could obviously like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, means the world to me. But anyway, guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.